Hi, welcome back to Art and Soul. My name is Mike Severin, and I'm so glad you could join me today. We're going to get back into a painting that we started here on the last episode, and hopefully tonight we can get it finished up. And I've been fighting a cold for the last few days, so if you'll forgive my little plugged up little part of my voice, I would appreciate it. So. Before we get started here, let me kind of go through what we've done here. We've got this little scene here with the sky with a nice little clouds bank that's in the background there, and a little foreground that we've started. And so tonight, what we're going to do is I want to show you how to develop out these clouds a little bit more. And then, but the biggest thing that I want to be concentrating on during this episode is how to do these limbs on the trees. And I have probably, of all of the things that I have with lessons with students, the problem that most students have problems with are getting those limbs and how to do that. So that's the reason why I want to dedicate a little bit of time here to show how that's done in kind of in a little more in depth than normal. So to begin with, I want to take, we've already got a base of these clouds that are up here in the sky, and a lot of the clouds are going to be covered up with the limbs that we're going to be putting in, but I just want to show you how you can develop those clouds to give more three-dimension to them. And most of these are really soft here, and there's several different tonal changes that are in those clouds right now, but we're going to add more to it. So what I'm going to do here, I've got a really tight camera in on the palette tonight because I'm going to be going through doing our limbs, and I wanted that up close a little more. But right now I'm just grabbing some titanium white with my big fan brush here. So you can see I loaded both sides of the brush with not a lot, but with some titanium white. And I'm just going to come back in and just lightly with the corner of that fan brush, I'm just going to bring in some of the color into a little more brightness into some of those clouds. And if you notice, I'm just using like I said, the corner of the brush, and I'm doing these circular type of motions. Now this brush, and I'm going to show you another way to do it here in a minute. This is a nice way of making some nice soft fluffy clouds pretty easily, and I'm not going to develop it too much, but basically what I did was I just put in some bright spots on those clouds, and then maybe I want to do just a little bit more right on the edge of that top layer of clouds up there. So that's one way of doing it. Now I want to grab just a regular, this is a 1-inch bristle brush. And the same thing applies of just taking, and I'm just going to, with this brush, right on the bottom sections of those clouds, and just lightly over the top, just soften those out just a little bit. You can apply the paint with this brush, and I often do for my clouds, but the fan brush seems to be another way that works well for people. And so, maybe the best thing for you to do is experiment and try it with different brushes and figure out which one works the best for you and the easiest for you to work. But as you can see, and probably even hear, I'm basically just scrubbing that into the canvas, and the tops of those, just fluff them up just a little bit. And you can see by doing that right there, we've made even another layer of depth into those clouds up there. And if you wanted to bring in a little of that down below, you could do that. In fact, I think I'll do that just a little bit. And I'm just getting barely any color on my brush. And again, I'm just doing that scrubbing motion. Just a hair bit of paint is all that it takes, because I don't want to make these too bright down here. These are way back in the background, so they would be softer anyway. And the other thing too, when you're doing clouds, the clouds that would be farthest back are going to be, because they are so far back in the distance, they need to be smaller in size. So don't get carried away making all of your clouds from the top of the painting all the way to the bottom the same size, because in nature, obviously, if it's far away, it's going to be smaller and less definition to it. So that kind of gives you a good idea of how to highlight some of those clouds. And you could come back in if you wanted to, again, with another layer and make it even brighter if you wanted to. But I think for our purposes, what we're trying to accomplish here tonight, I think we're going to leave it like that. Now, the trees, this is where, like I said, so many people that I teach have problems with doing limbs, and they're actually quite simple to do. And most people, once they figure out the consistency of the paint, will understand that that's where the difficulty lies, is getting the consistency of the paint correct so it applies correctly onto the canvas. So for just, as most of you know, I usually make my own black, but just to make it easy for the show today, I'm just using a straight Mars black, and I'm just grabbing some Mars black here and I'm just putting it out. And I'm taking now paint thinner, odorless paint thinner, and I'm bringing it into that. And I'm working it in and bringing in pigment into it. Now, what I'm trying to do, and you've heard me say this many, many times, if you've watched this show for very long, the key is making this ink-like consistency. That's not like water. We don't want it watery, because if it's watery, you're not going to get the coverage that you're wanting. But you need to get it where it's runny, but it's not overly runny. So I've rolled that brush now around and got that pigment well into the bristles, and we've already blocked in kind of our base of our tree here, but I want to take and now define out some of those limbs. And so we'll just start here on this bottom one, and we've got a limb that we've got that's showing that's coming out across here. And so many times when I do lessons, the other thing that people do often is they take and hold it like it's a pencil. Now, there's times where you can do that, but so many times what happens is you end up losing the fluidity of the ends of the bristles, and that's what makes those nice little limbs, is that the way that the bristles are interacting on the canvas. And Bob Ross used to say it all the time, maybe you've got a little bit of a shake in your hands. This is one time where it's actually going to be an advantage, because if you look up at trees, there are every conceivable way a limb can go, it goes. So use that little bit of what you think might be a problem, use it for your advantage. And I want that limb a little beefier coming off there. And I'm trying to hold the brush out far enough that you actually can see the way it's working on the canvas. Try to, occasionally my hand might get in the way, but if you notice, by holding the brush farther out on the handle, you allow those bristles to actually work rather than trying to manipulate it by, like you would if you were with a pencil. And you can see how fine of line that I'm getting there, and it's all because of letting that letting the bristles do their job. And I know a lot of this is going to be repetitive as I start developing out this tree, but I think it's really important. So many people like to do trees, but get frustrated with them, and this is one of those things that the only way to really get better at it is to practice it. And so I oftentimes, when I'm doing lessons, will have my students just on an old canvas or on even a piece of cardboard or paper works, just take and do practice doing limbs. And limbs go every direction, and in fact, I was just doing a lesson yesterday with a gal, and I told her, and I would encourage you to do the same thing, is when you're doing trees, don't be afraid to take, and in fact, we'll just do it here, and turn and work at it from a different direction. It's real easy to get in where everything is repetitive and they all look alike, and we don't want that. You're not going to see that in nature, and so, we're trying here to do a representation of what you would see in nature, and so that's the reason why. Don't be afraid. Don't feel like you're stuck with having to have the canvas a certain direction. Now, that last limb there, paint started to get a little too thin, and I needed to give it a little more, or not too thin, but it wasn't getting the coverage, so I need to make it a little more fluid now, or it will again go back over and cover. And I know that, like I said, this might get a little repetitive, but I think by watching me do this, and I've had this happen many times where by people just watching it, they go, oh, okay, I see now what I'm doing wrong. And so, notice, just watch how I do it, and maybe it will help you improve your own painting of your trees. We're starting in this time of year. We're right in the middle of fall right now, and the trees are all losing their limbs or all of their leaves off of their limbs. And coming into today to the studio, I noticed there were quite a number of trees that had completely lost their leaves already, and I heard somebody, and I've made comments about it before, but it's something that I think I'm going to bring up again. Somebody said that they don't like this time of year because they don't like seeing all the leaves dead on the ground, and how it was depressing for them. And my thoughts are that without those beautiful green leaves that were up there this summer, and that we all enjoyed in the shade when it was nice and warm outside, those leaves have served their purpose, and now their next purpose is to fall to the ground, to decompose, so that next year's leaves have the nourishment to grow and develop on that tree for more generations to come. And so, next time you see a tree that's vacant of all of its leaves, it's not dead. It's just gone into a little bit of hibernation to gain its strength and to gain the nourishment that it needs to go on to the next chapter of its life. And I think that oftentimes that's what we need to learn, that lesson in our own lives, that there's oftentimes chapters close, and we can be sad about that, of the loss there, but at the same time we need to look forward to the rebirth and what that end of one chapter means versus coming into the next part of that part of your life. And so that's sometimes a lot easier to say than to actually do, but I found that for myself that it's real easy to get depressed when there's changes and think of it as a bad thing, but oftentimes those bad things can lead to some wonderful things. And I think, so many times we go through life and we expect things to go a certain way, and we have a plan that we think should be what the universe has in store for us. And so many times that's not exactly the way it works out. And in fact, I used to own a wedding chapel years ago, and I used to hear couples all the time talking about the dream of, they wanted the picket fence and the house and the 3 kids and the dog, and they've talked about how that, we'll finish up with college and start the family and get a good job and how life is going to be so great. Well, and it can be at times, but at the same time, there's a lot of things that happen in life, and a lot of those dreams that you have maybe don't turn out quite the way you had envisioned them. And life, has a tendency to go through changes, sometimes without our even desire or want to. Just like the trees, they may not want to shed those green leaves, but they know that in the end, it's for their own good. And so when things come along in life that maybe aren't part of your plan, what you thought was going to happen, the direction that you were going to go, don't look at it as a bad thing. It could actually be a blessing in disguise. And those of you that I've shared the story with, many of you know that how I ended up going full-time as an artist was not really by choice. It was kind of forced on me because of circumstances, getting hit in a hit-and-run accident and hurting a back that I had issues with earlier in life, and was unable to continue doing the job that I was doing. And at the time, it was depressing and frustrating, and was real easy to go into a funk. And I thought, I kind of like to eat, and so what can I do to make a living? And I've wanted to do the full-time as an artist for a long time, but I was afraid to take that risk. And I really feel like in many ways that God allowed something to happen in my life with the accident, which at the time was not a good thing, but at the same time, it ended up a good thing in the end. And so a lot of it has to do with your attitude of when circumstances happen in life, how you choose to deal with those. And if you choose to dwell on it as a negative, then maybe you haven't learned the lesson that you were intended to learn, and maybe you've missed out on an opportunity that was presented to you because of that circumstance. So I would encourage you to not don't always look at circumstances that may appear negative. Look for a positive in them, because chances are there is something good that's there, and an opportunity if you will just look for it and allow it to happen in your life. And I know I'm yapping along there. I'm painting those little limbs all along while I'm talking there, and hopefully I didn't put you all to sleep during that little rant. But it's important, I think, that we just so many times do that in life, and there's some things that are just out of our control, and it's how we deal with those circumstances that really helps define, I think, who we are, and lead us in directions that maybe we need to be going, that we don't often take the paths that we should. So I could develop these a little more, and I will to a degree, but before I go any farther, I want to point this out. And this is the other thing that I see happen so many times in lessons. Trees, when you look at them, have limbs that are coming out in every direction. Now, most people just take and have them just coming out like they're, a lot of them like they're showing there. But there's trees limbs that would be on the back side of this, as well as on the sides, as well as in the front. So when you're putting these trees together, keep all of those things in mind so that they don't all look like the limbs are just coming straight off of the sides. And how you do that is, and that's the reason why, if you've noticed, I've pulled all of these limbs from the sides in, and I'll show you how we're going to take and define those out now. Now this one, because this big limb that's coming here, I want it to look like it's really coming off kind of the front, going off to the right, this big old limb that's there. And so I've pulled him across in front of our base coat that we've got here. Now, what we're going to do is, with this same script brush, and we can use all sorts of different brushes, but we're going to say that our light source is coming from the left side here, or from the right side. So we'll take now and do our shadowed side, and I'm just coming straight down with that liner brush. And that first limb up there, because I came down in front of, right over the top, there's a difference in the color between this limb and our base here of our trunk, and that pushes that limb on the back side of our tree. So just keep that in mind as you're going down and doing the limbs, and that one we'll just leave it where he's maybe just coming right off of the side of it here. And we'll just keep coming down. I'll reload up with some paint. And even though I'm using the script brush, if you notice, I'm using it, maybe if you can see there, it's almost flat on the surface, because I've got a lot of paint that's in the bristles there, but from when I was doing all of the limbs. But that's just an easy way to remove that out. I'm just going to grab just a little 1/2-inch brush here, and I'm just grabbing some of that black. In fact, I'll go in, get a little more of the Mars Black, and I'm going to grab in some of my purple, dioxazine purple, and because I've got both of those on the brush, it's going to have a kind of a purple cast to it. And I'm just going to define out that shadowed side a little more there. Maybe a little root that's coming down there. Now as I'm coming over, I'm using less pressure and I'm allowing more of the underpainting, that gray that we had, I'm allowing that to come out where it's shining through it. And what that does is it just gives the illusion that it is a rounded tree, which obviously all trees are. They're not just flat. So you can see I'm just kind of coming down, and just a few little spots even on the other side there where maybe the light is picking in the bark. There's all sorts of different crevices and nooks, and just by, again, if you notice, I'm just not doing any special stroke here. I'm just kind of just scrubbing it in, and that looks pretty good like that. We want to put a few more highlights now that are on there, and so we'll just grab some alizarin crimson, add in a little bit of our white, and just a few little highlight colors that come into play there. And that quickly, you can really start developing out a nice tree. Now you can take this and continue it on all sorts of different directions. Put some things here in the front. Maybe you want to make it an old apple tree, and there's a bunch of apples that are on the ground. This tree is yours, so you can do with it what you want to do. And I hope that this little episode on how to get that paint consistency right will help you in your tree paintings. I'll leave you with this. Last week, a gentleman, my next door neighbor, he's in his 80s, he came over to the house in the morning, and this was actually the day I was supposed to tape last week. And he came over to the house and about mid-morning, and he was white as a sheet and was having all sorts of problems. And I ended up taking him to the hospital and thought he was having a stroke. And as I'm sitting there, I'm getting anxious because of the time that's going on, and I've got things I need to do to prepare for the show, and I'm worried about the show and getting here in time and the people that are involved. And all of a sudden it hit me. I'm in a room full of people that are sad, that are hurting. They're in the emergency room there. And suddenly I go, okay, Mike, your situation, your worries are nothing compared to the people around you. Take this time and spend healing and blessing people around you, which is what I did. Maybe that happens to you occasionally. Check yourself, check your situation that you're in. Are you so self-absorbed that you're not looking around you at the hurts that are around you? This week, be creative, be inspired, find somebody to bless. Thank you for joining me here on Art and Soul. We'll see you next week.